Let's bring in Greg Fergus now. He is the Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board. That minister was also at today's news conference talking about the perils of passing this motion to investigate the government's pandemic response. Mr. Fergus, thanks for taking time to speak with me. First of all, let's start there.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Minister Anand said essentially today that passage of this motion, and it has passed, would put Canadian lives at risk. Can you explain specifically how it would do that?
Well, let's set the table in terms of the context here. Back at the beginning of the pandemic, we discovered that we didn't have a secure domestic supply of personal protective equipment. And so the call went out to Canadians, individuals, business people, to help step up to the plate, perhaps transform the things that their lines of business that they normally don't do, and to come forward and help Canada supply a homegrown supply of PPE. And so they did. And, they did so under a certain set of rules, and we've been very transparent about it. You can find on a website all the contracts which have been awarded, but there are obviously some commercially confidential issues.
Yeah.
Let
me jump in there if I can. Sorry to interrupt, but
Please, no problem.
If you go to I've been to the website, and it lists all kinds of contracts, but all the companies, except for a couple, are identified by company A, B. Companies aren't named. The amounts are there, but so the website tells you contracts have been let out, but it doesn't tell you in most cases who they were let out to.
True, because some of those companies, of course, I'm going to make an assumption here, is that a lot of these companies had provided services to Canada, to the people of Canada, and in the sense that they did so perhaps not in their normal lines of business, and because there's so few people who are involved in these industries, you're really beginning to peg down, who sold for what price, and it might be a commercially confidential environment, so that it could be a problem for them. Now, look, I'm not in business. I'm in government, and I do believe that we should make sure that the money is well spent. The question is, how do we do so in a way that respects our commercial contracts that we had with the private sector?
Right. Is it to your knowledge? I mean, we heard some companies express concerns over the weekend about how this process might unfold. To the very point you're making, protecting, secret information or company information that they wouldn't want made public. But have any companies, to your knowledge, actually told the government that they will not do business with you if they think the contracts and business dealings will be subject to parliamentary scrutiny?
Well, I'm certain that no company would want to have the odium of saying that publicly and making that declaration. But I bet you a lot of them are thinking, and this is the reason why they wrote us a letter through their industry association. I even read the headlines this morning. I hadn't had the opportunity to read the article, but there was one company in particular that pointed out that this is a real problem for them.
Minister Anand told that news conference today that these companies that do business with Canada, they do it because we're a sophisticated business party that knows how to do business and protect their sensitive information. I guess I'm wondering, why don't you offer them the same argument about our ability as a sophisticated democratic nation to examine that kind of sensitive information at a parliamentary committee and still be able to protect it?
Well, yes, that would be great. I guess that in some way we're certainly going to have to respect the will of Parliament, and that's not negotiable. So we're going to have to try to find some happy medium in which we can do that and yet still respect our confidential way of dealing, respecting the commercial confidentiality of different companies. It's a tough problem, Peter, and it's one which, unfortunately, for political reasons, I think the opposition has placed us in this compromising situation. But we'll do our best to making sure that we provide Canadians with the confidentiality that they would expect from us, and to do the work that Parliament expects us to do.
Right. But in some ways, that sounds like saying to the opposition parties, look, we got a big job to do here, and no one suggesting that's not the case. We are in the middle of a second wave of pandemic here, but it's almost like, we're doing a very good job here. Just trust us on that. At what point should opposition parties and Parliament be allowed to go back or be allowed to look and say, okay, we want to make sure we're on the right track here, and as we go forward, nobody's quite sure how long it'll last, that we stay on the right track?
Well, and I think that's a really big challenge, and that's the reason why we do have our agents of Parliament that can be able to take a look at this over. This is why we have the Office of the Auditor General, to making sure that Canadians get a good value for money, but it's also being evaluated by a disinterested party in all of this. We just don't want to get into a situation where we're playing politics. Look, with me, it's fine. I mean, you're doing that to a politician, but to do that with our companies that employ many Canadians that are really stepped up to the plate to do their corporate citizenship service, that's a different kettle of fish. And so we got to find that right balance.
The government takes the position that this information should be vetted by, if the committee is now going ahead, so it should be vetted by the Privy Council and not the law clerk of the House of Commons. The Privy Council, so that everybody understands, is effectively the deputy ministerial department for the Prime Minister. PCO is an arm of government. The law clerk serves all parliamentarians. So I guess I'm wondering, isn't the law clerk a more objective choice?
Well, I would, Peter, you and I both are admirers of our federal public service, our nonpartisan federal public service. It's run on that basis. I don't think anyone can accuse the Privy Council office or any senior leadership in the federal government as being partisan. I think they would do a very nonpartisan perspective, because they're the ones who run the government at the direction, of course, of their political masters. But when they are entrusted to do a nonpartisan job, they certainly do it. That's been my experience in the over 32 years I've been in this national capital region.
All right, Greg Fergus, you're telling me, it sounds like tonight, though, that you'll have to obey the will of Parliament. And so, because some people are wondering, look, the motion passes, now the government will drag its feet and may push this down the road to the point where that becomes a test of confidence if people aren't satisfied with how long the process is moving. Are you telling me tonight that the government's going to follow this motion and do its best to produce the documents this committee wants?
The government has two big principles in front of it. One is to respect the will of Parliament. Second is to respect commercial and confidential information. And somehow we're going to have to reconcile that. That's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of goodwill. And so we'll get to work. It's unfortunate that our energies aren't really being focused on doing the number one job that Canadians expect us to be, and that is to ensuring their health and welfare.
All right, Greg Fergus, good to talk to you tonight. Thanks for joining me again.
Always a pleasure.